G'day and welcome again to the Campfire Project discussion. And today I have with me Anne McKeown, who is the owner of 2 Empower Coaching. She's a master NLP coach and the founder of Sydney Women's Self-Empowerment Meetup. How are you, Anne?
Great. Good morning. Lovely to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, you're welcome. And then we have Mark Guay, who is a mediation teacher, performance coach, and online adjunct instructor at the Gurnick Academy of Medical Arts. How are you, Mark?
Hey, Alan. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. It's the evening or the late afternoon here in San Diego, but always love connecting with people across the pond.
Excellent. I know it's pretty warm over there at the moment, to contrast over here in Australia where it's freezing.
It is.
And then we have Peter Amodio, who is a domestic violence consultant. How are you, Peter?
I'm fantastic.
It's good to have you. You're here in Newcastle with me, so you're feeling the cold as well.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we've been talking about a subject today that we thought was quite relevant, especially in the COVID situation, about how to create meaningful connections with people in a time where physical touch has become taboo. And I know that in my particular case, I'm pretty sure it'll be the same with each of you, that you've all become so much busier in your own respective fields because of this situation. So if I ask you, first of all, Mark, can you tell us about how you've been finding things over there?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that this is our topic of conversation, because this is one that makes sense to me on the professional front and the personal front. So to give you a little bit of a backstory, on a professional front, I work with clients and teams to help them navigate change. And a lot of that has to do with having the difficult conversations, either with your teammates or your employees. And on a personal front, my wife and I are expecting our first child in just a few months.
Lovely.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So this COVID situation has changed things quite a bit. And my wife and I have had to be pretty serious in terms of adhering towards the distancing rules and being conscious about physical contact and the potentiality of getting COVID. So I've been looking at ways of, okay, well, how can we deepen our connection with those that we love most? And this is something that I am finding we need desperately, because it's through times of crises that we need each other. And oftentimes in my work, I remind people that we forget that we're animals. And solitary confinement is one of the worst things that we can do to punish people. And we only need to look at our children to have a good example of how this really affects us on the internal front, right? When our kids aren't able to hug each other, aren't able to play, we see the effects in the mental health. And I think it's rather naive to think that doesn't affect adults as well. So I think it's super important that we take a look at this and we go, okay, we're going to social distance, understood. But that doesn't mean that we need to limit our deep, intimate connection. And what I found personally is that this time of stopping, where the economic engine in the world has sort of come to a pause, it's forced us to not only take a look in the mirror, but also take a look at those that we love or those that we spend the most time with, and perhaps face the things that we've been ignoring and have these times of breakthrough and intimate connection. It's not easy, of course, it's quite difficult, but I'm glad that we're here to talk about it. And I'm very excited to learn from Anne and Peter, because, and you as well, Alan, because to be completely honest with you, I haven't gotten it all figured out. This is still something that I'm working through as well. I think I've got a few things figured out, but I'm sure I have quite a lot more to learn.
Well, I think that's pretty accurate for probably all of us, if we're not going to be arrogant about things, because we're all in the stage of learning and we've never been through something like this before. But it's not, I haven't anyway. So it's a learning curve for all of us. How about you, Anne? What have you found?
Yeah, well, look, I'm a hugger. So as soon as I meet somebody, I'm like, hi, great to see you. And it's a big hug. And of course, now I'm having to go, ah. And even that body language of stop is quite negative. It's usually like we're shutting people down. So I've been very aware of what I used to do naturally. I'm now having to consciously stop doing. And I'm finding it really hard because I get a lot of my own sense of belonging and community and being loved and stuff through touch and hugs and physical connection. So one of the things that I've been doing on a personal level is I go out for a walk with the dog in the evening and I'm phoning one person. And I'm just having an old-fashioned phone call, and it might be a friend that I've not seen for ages. And actually, I maybe wouldn't have seen her had it not been for COVID, because even if we didn't have COVID, because I'm busy at the moment and maybe wouldn't have made time. But what it's made me do is stop and think about who have I not been in touch with much lately, and who could I connect with. And it's actually become a new part of my routine where I just, you know, walking the dog on my mobile, how are you doing? And just a really deep emotional connection then. You know, how are your family coping with this? What's happened with you at work? That kind of thing. And actually that's been a beautiful thing, because I feel as if the bonds between some friends where normally we would go out, we would have fun, but maybe the conversation wouldn't get to that depth. It is now, and people are opening up about the struggles, and I think when we're able to wear our heart on our sleeve and be honest, then that forms real connection, because we're meeting not at a level of wearing a mask and, oh yeah, I'm a professional and everything's fine. Behind closed doors is where we weep. We're actually saying, you know what, this is tough. I'm struggling. The kids are driving me nuts. My husband's working from home now. I'm distracted. We're worried about his job. That's not my story. It's, you know, what I'm hearing from other people. So that's one thing that I've done on the personal front. On a professional front, I had actually, International Women's Week is one of my biggest weeks in the year, which is in March, early March. And I had been invited to do a lot of talks and presentations, and I was just beginning to get into corporations. I've always worked with women, small business owners, but there were a few opportunities opening for corporations that wanted women to step up into leadership positions, but the women weren't stepping up, and to sort of go in and work with them on their mindset and encourage them and stuff. And then we had a holiday in Cuba. And so we flew over to Cuba and we were there 2 days. And then our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said, all Australians have to come back. All the borders are shutting, flights are getting cancelled. And so we did not want to be stuck in Cuba. And then this panic happened where suddenly we couldn't get flights. Prices of flights were doubling by the minute. We weren't sure if we could get into the States from Cuba. Everybody was trying to go via Mexico because of the embargoes and stuff. And it just was this sudden, I actually felt really calm inside till about 2 seconds before we were told that our trip was cancelled and we had to go home. And suddenly I could feel, and because I'm so aware of my own thoughts and how that affects my emotions and then my behavior, I was like, oh, I need to be aware of this and be conscious of the impact this is having on me. And thank goodness my husband speaks fluent Spanish, and so we were able to get flights and get out. But we landed in Florida first of all, and everywhere was empty. It was completely desolated. We got a night in a hotel, but there was one person on the front desk. There was nobody in the restaurant. The bar was closed. Where they said they wouldn't clean the room until we'd left. It was like overnight, this weird world that we ended up in. Anyway, long story short, after paying a fortune to get home, we put ourselves into 14-day isolation. And I then reached out to these companies and said, where are you all? Because all these huge corporates have closed. All these buildings were empty. The city was desolate. And the panic that was there was huge as well. And the women, mainly it was HR officers that I was dealing with, and they said, oh my God, Anne, we don't know how to deal with this now. If people are at home all day, they won't do their job. What if they have a nap at lunchtime? How do we keep them connected? And there was this real fear of not being able to have connection because you weren't in the same room.
Mm.
And so that actually opened doors for me, because I then said, well, look, why don't I do a free 1-hour training session via Zoom for your teams on how to adjust to this new normal. And that's what I did. And from that, got quite a lot of business actually. So COVID's been wonderful for me. I've had the busiest 3 months ever. But in a way that's sad, because what it shows is that more people need help.
That's it. Well, most of us grow our businesses, and that because people need our help at that time. But it just had to be something that was actually taking life, which is a bit of a disappointment. How about yourself, Peter?
Well, my love language is physical touch. So in my culture, you know, we sort of hug, even kiss men. So it's difficult. And in my line of work, domestic violence has gone through the roof the last 3 months. And the old way of coaching, I had to rechange everything and start again. It was not working. And I decided to go into really NLP with the victims to try and get into their minds and change their life that way, because it's different now. I'm not just dealing with one person, I'm dealing with families that are at home. Kids are home from school, dad's working from home, mum, and there was already domestic violence in the past. Very difficult. And I thought, how am I going to deal with this? It's been trial and error for a long time. And I come up with NLP, and I've got sort of a design, a different NLP. It's the original one, but I've added a lot of stuff to it to make it fit into the domestic violence role. And it's been very successful for the last probably about month and a half. I found a lot of change in the at home. So I had to, I mean, there's a lot of different modules to go into, not just one part of it. But the biggest part, I think, is I've been telling the victims, do not confine yourself to a prison of your own making. And, you know, let's see what sort of habits you got and what's happening at home. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of change, and definitely that had to change everything. It's just, I've never been in this territory before. Usually we just go through the normal life coaching, but that was not working when you can't see them in person and explain. It's all over the phone or on, you know, and you're dealing with so many people.
That's
so,
it. Yeah, I noticed that, you know, the words that we use as well. First of all, I was talking to a guy earlier on LinkedIn today, and he was saying that for his birthday, just a couple of days ago, that, you know, as far as the family at home, and he's having the cake and the usual thing of blowing out candles, he didn't have a candle on the cake. They gave him a candle and lit it, and he blew that out on its own. So people are that way. These are people he's living with in the house. So, you know, we're very, you know, we're probably more paranoid and more worried than we should be about it. So there's been a lot of fear around it. The language we're using, I see as a major problem as well. I cringe every time I go down to the shopping centre and I see those stickers they've stuck on the floor that are, you know, 1.5 meters, 2 meters apart, and it talks about keep your social distance. And I get really upset about the word that we've used, social distancing, and not physical distancing, because we are social beings. And, you know, as soon as you say somebody's got to be socially distant, all of a sudden they feel isolated. And as you said, Peter, they put themselves in their own jail of their own creation. Whereas if we said physical distancing, okay, yeah, I want to keep away from the germs, that's fine. But as I've been saying to everybody, since this has happened, I've been so busy and I've been never more socially connected in my life. I'm talking about hundreds of people every week, and that's not figurative, that's literal. You know, there've been people there on a regular basis in large groups and everything else, networking groups and all the rest. And so I'm more connected to people than I have been before. But again, you know, physical touch is important to a lot of us. As you said, it's your love language, Peter, and pretty much mine as well. An old mate I go and see on Saturday morning, he's in his 80s, and I've seen the look on his face. You go in, you know, you say hello, but that's it. And I can see how lost he's been. So As he said, he's in his 80s. You know, he's had a good life and everything else. I'm also so separated from everybody, isolating from everybody, and by being at home on my own. So when I get together with him, I just give him a hug, and I just see his face just lighten up because he's missed that. And I think that's what's actually happening. So many people are then feeling that then magnifies all the other issues that are going on in their lives.
Yeah, well, personally, my children, my ex-wife, I'm divorced. She wanted to send them to school. I wanted them to stay home because I'm at risk. You know, I've got a heart problem and I can't put myself at risk. So there's already friction there, and I'm not even married, you know. So I've had this problem with other couples that have been telling me they've got the same issues. And so what do you do? That creates another problem, because then what do? You don't see your kids. And because my kids went back to school, my partner said, I can't see you now. Because, you know, you're at risk. You're putting the risk in my house. So it's created that distance between me and my partner, the kids, the families. My mum's 90. If my kids went to school now, I can't see my mum. So it's just, where do you stop? So I can see why people are struggling. And, you know, how can we help them? And I just developed this little program, and it's been working. It's fantastic. It's a lot of self-awareness. That's what it's about. You know, when you're at home and you get angry, what do you do? How do you react? What happens? And they never thought of it. You know, what do you do? And then I have to explain, do you swear? Do you hit the table? Do you walk away? What do you do? Stonewalling? And they say, well, I can't. I said, well, next time you get angry, see what you do, and then we'll demolish that and start from scratch. You know, if it's what you hit in the table, and you stop hitting the table. If you speak fast or you swear, speak slower, don't swear. And yeah, it's been good.
I love that, Peter. And that's about taking the end result and working it backwards to see what triggered that, and being aware of how we ended up in that place. Because often when we end up angry and upset and there's all that emotion, how often have you said something and afterwards sort of gone, I can't believe I said that, or I can't believe I did that, or you know, it's strung by emotion. But we're being put into unusual circumstances, and even in my home, and my daughters are at uni now, so they're studying from home, and my husband's working from home, and you can probably see behind me I've got this big long desk, and we were sharing this desk for a while, and then it started to drive me nuts, because if he was on the phone I couldn't concentrate, and then at one point he had a bit of a cold, and he was kind of had this rasping breathing, and I just turned around and I said to him, can you just stop breathing? And he was like, you realise what you just said to me? And I was like, I don't mean stop breathing altogether, I just mean stop breathing loudly, you know. And we've actually now got to the stage where he's now moved into one of our other, we have a spare bedroom because we're obviously from overseas and have lots of guests, and we've put a desk and things in there. We're not having any guests at the moment, nobody can fly and visit us. So it was like, how can you make the best out of what you've already got? And turning that room into another study was like the best thing we could have done for both of us, because you know, we both started to get busier. And so it's looking at your situation and saying, you know, how can I work from this? And I could see my behavior wasn't good. I was like, why am I behaving like this? And I had to work it back to being like, because I just can't work under these circumstances. I'm used to having peace and quiet when I work. So I love that you're doing that with your clients.
So making those better connections, it's, you know, making that better connection with yourself first of all is what I'm hearing from you. That awareness of yourself and understanding why you respond the way, or first of all how you respond, and then, you know, looking at alternatives on how you can change that response in those situations.
Can I pick up too on the language thing that you said there, Alan? Because I think I actually did a Facebook Live on this way back in sort of March, April time when it was all new. I got to the stage where I stopped watching the news because the language that we heard, I mean, unprecedented times, if I hear that one more time, that immediately, unprecedented, that word is such a negative, it makes us feel insecure and unsure.
Mm.
And then it's like the new normal, or it's all about worry, isolation, fear, separation, or distancing, as you called it. You know, all the words, and I don't have them with me now, but when I did the Facebook Live, I wrote them all down. I listened to the news a couple of days in a row, and honestly, there was about 20 words, and they were all fear-based.
Mm.
And I thought, no wonder people are scared.
Yeah. All the words that they find that are so emotive that steer the conversations and create the fear.
Yep.
Well, as I said, the news is only about selling advertising space, and that's about it.
Yep.
Because I know that I was watching an interview that Oprah Winfrey was doing with a group of people all about the Black Lives Matter. But the words she started using were extremely emotive and steered the conversation down one path, which she wanted to take it. And I just totally lose respect for people who are using that manipulation for their own agendas. It's always a thing to be very concerned of. As I said, that on the floor itself, social distance, social distance, social distance. My God, from the front door of the building to the checkout, by the time you get in there, you've read that at least 100 times, and it's just drummed into you. And I could start feeling it inside, of all of a sudden having to be socially distanced from people and saying, hang on, no, I'm not going to be socially distant. I'll be physically distant. Mm-hmm. So I try to walk in now and not look at the floor. Look into the distance.
Yeah. Well, that's great, because one of the things that, you know, we said at the beginning was, you know, how can we help people, and through what we teach and through what we've learned ourselves. And I think that's a great example. Don't look at the signs on the floor or have another word in your own head that you replace with it. And don't watch the news in the morning, or, you know, switch the thing when you start to feel in your body that there's a tension or a reaction, just switch those things off. It's like you wouldn't put your hand on a hot stove, you know, it's going to burn you. So don't go that close to the negativity.
Yeah. Well, the hot plate, I usually work that out by the third time. Keep your hand away from it after that. Was that hot? Oh, yes, it was. How about yourself? What have you noticed over there, Mark, with the words that have been used that in your, you know, are you watching much of the media itself or not?
Which angle do I want to take here? So, couple things. One, I want to call attention to emotional intelligence. And let me say a couple things here. So one, I think something really positive that is happening out of this is we're getting to pause and take a look at who we are as human beings and who we are perhaps beyond the human being. I'm talking here about your soul, purpose, that type of thing. And those questions are beautiful. And I think it's the type of questions that we all should really be asking more. But we were so caught up in this busy world where busy equals successful and doing was valued far more over being. And that's a little skewed. They're both equally important. So on one hand, it's amazing that we're coming in touch with ourselves as emotional beings. Emotions are valuable, extremely valuable. And so often we've been trained for you know, good reasons, good intentions, I guess, to not really honor the emotional experience. And like it or not, we're all feeling the emotional experience, whether you're in Peter's situation with the work that you're doing there with domestic violence, which is incredibly sad, you know, or it's the joy. It doesn't matter. We're experiencing emotion for the first time, to where myself with my men, or my work with men, where I often hear men say, I just don't cry. What they really mean is, if you dig deeper, I can't cry. And now we're seeing that actually people are breaking open into this emotive being again, which is very difficult. My God, that's a difficult journey to reintegrate back into, particularly midlife, but it's happening. What's interesting to me though, in terms of the words, Alan, that you're talking about, and Anne, is the EQ. There is so much that is said in just a few words. And particularly people in our professions, we know how to spin a word. We have to mark it. We know the connotative weight of a word. The media knows it just the same. The other day on the playground, someone had put up a sign that said, "Please don't kill grandma," on the playground. And that triggered me, where I said, no, not okay. I went over and I ripped that down. Because I know what they were trying to do, and I clearly understood what they were trying to get people to not be on the playground. That's not a way to go about and do it. That's incredibly low EQ in my opinion.
It's abusive to every child.
It is. And so words carry tremendous weight. Now, I want to just highlight real quick, though. I am a truth nerd, meaning I'm fascinated at the world right now in terms of media, because the truth has never been more difficult to pinpoint. And journalism, I'm trained in rhetoric and journalism. That's my undergrad work, that my former career as an English teacher. The truth is important. It's super valuable. And that's so difficult to find. So while I certainly agree, Anne and Alan and Peter, I don't think I heard your opinion on this. So if you're of the same as well, that's wonderful. I understand. Yes, you don't really need to read the news, because it does, unfortunately, carry a very negative effect on the inner psyche and one's mental health. That said, me personally, I am finding it so utterly fascinating. I'll read one side, I'll read the other side, particularly here in the States, the United States, where I've never seen more contention ever in terms of what is right, what is wrong, the masks becoming a symbol for division. Utterly fascinating. So I'll go to one extreme site to another extreme to primary sources, and I'm utterly fascinated at these echo chambers that people go down. It's terrifying, to be completely honest, as well. But it's on a what is truth level, on a rhetorical level. Oh my goodness, this is the most fascinating time we have ever lived in. That said, majority of the time, you don't need to read. You don't need to start off your day reading the paper. That's not the best way. Of meditation, tuning into the self, your words of affirmation, feeding yourself, getting fueled. That's probably the most important thing you can be doing to start the day.
The big distinction I see in there is that for most people who are watching the news, they're listening to the news to get information, whereas what you're talking about there is actually beyond the information. It's not even about the information. It's about the different groups and where they're coming from and understanding that side of it. So I hate the thought of psychopaths and things like that, but I do a lot of research in that area because it's an area of understanding and that fascinates me. But if I was just an individual, I'd be staying away from that altogether, because it would leave me with sleepless nights. So it's for the most people, and that they're going to be better connected to the people around them. Well, first of all, being connected to themselves, getting away from the information which is not true, it's false. I know Trump carries on about fake news. Well, at the moment, I think most of the news is fake to a degree, because everybody's got their agendas they're running. I would say to people, if you're going to listen to the news, is to listen to it and ask yourself, what is the agenda behind the person who is speaking? Is it really about the subject they're talking about? Or is it something else, that another line that they're actually pushing? Are they using that to manipulate? And then if you go into that way, you're actually not being controlled by the news. You are starting to analyze it and work it out. The same as when you've gone to those, extreme sites, Mark, and listen to what they're saying and understand where they're coming from. So if you do that, then you become the analyst. You're taking control of it, which is probably a step in the direction of having a better connection with yourself.
I think that's the important part. Sorry. Mark?
No, please go ahead. I have a question. Maybe we'll get to it later. It's not of great importance.
Just the thing about the individual, because I tend to work with individuals, and we only have a certain amount of time and energy during each 24 hours. And how we spend that time and energy results in how we feel about life, the doing and the being that you so eloquently mentioned there, Mark. And I love that we are human beings, we're not human doings. And I think, and we do get caught up in the whole, you're successful depending on what material gain you have and whatever. What I think this has done is it's brought everybody to the same level. So I've been on calls where the CEO is sitting in his living room on Zoom with a t-shirt, the same as the rest of the team. And that's a real leveler. Now, when we turn the TV off, the Zoom call off, the work off, and we then need to deal with ourselves, it's like, how am I dealing with this, and what impact is that having on the people around me? And what techniques can I use, or what strategies can I implement in my day so that I'm emotionally intelligent to know what's going on and understand it, but equally, by looking after myself, I can then have a positive impact on those around me, not and act in a way that I've already chosen rather than react because of what's going on around me. And I think that's one of the hardest, because people haven't found themselves in this type of situation before. And it's like, how do I as an individual, and I've gone through it myself, I'm like, well, you know, how do I now deal with my daughters? They're at home, they're meant to be at uni, they're meant to be enjoying themselves with friends, all their lectures are online, they're sick of being in the house, they can't see their friends, you know, and there's part of me that feels like saying, well, just suck it up because the rest of the world's doing the same. But equally, that's just going to upset them. The mum doesn't understand, she doesn't care, da, da, da. So I've got to try and give them techniques to do. I also can't solve it for them, but to show them how to deal with this situation where they can find balance between the doing and the being, the frustration and the contentment.
Excellent.
Well, that's sorry, that hits a nerve with me, because the media, been a 25 years a policeman, and you go to a job and you come home and you watch the news and you think that's not what happened. You know, they're trying to instill fear into the people watching and thinking this is a really dangerous world we live in. You know, you get what you focus on. If you focus on people being assaulted or being murdered or whatever, and you have a look with 19, 20 million in Australia, and you get one murder a month, something like that, is it really that bad? Is it that dangerous at the world? So the media makes it dangerous, and you look at it and you think, see, it's too dangerous to go out at night. But we are all part of the problem. We're all connected, and I think that we need to take responsibility. And the biggest weapon we've got is self-awareness. And if we know the media might not be accurate, then we won't take it as serious. So I don't know how to convey that message, but I hope you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, I look at it, I think, well, with domestic violence, for instance, you know, a lot of men who aren't working, well, that's where we get our value from, is being able to provide and everything else. So there's a lot of feeling of loss in people, but at the same time, there's two sides to every coin. There's always an upside to a downside. And so what is the upside in this situation? You know, if we go back in time, men were the leaders of their family, and they haven't been for some time, but now it's been driven home when the man is not working. He goes, well, what's my role? Well, this is where there's a great opportunity now for those men to step up and become the leaders of their family again. Think about, well, what can I actually do here? You know, what's the most valuable thing that you've got? Well, if you've only got a partner, then it's your partner. If you've got children, then it's your children. And it's a family unit. Thinking about, well, how can I actually change the relationship I've got with them? How can I improve this? How can I help them find answers? They then become a problem solver instead of feeling they're in the middle of a problem. So there's so many things by just stepping up and going, okay, I'm going to now look for answers here. I'm going to, you know, get in touch with people, talk to the people Campfire's full of people who've got expertise in different areas. Get in touch with, because social media was so much connected to everybody. We'll always find somebody who's willing to, you know, put some time in and just listen, and then give some, some experience. I'm not going to say advice, but give experience of what they've actually learned, and then the person will go back and be able to apply that. We've got so much time on our hands still got the same amount of time every day, but we've got more time on our hands than we've had before, and it can be used so much more productively.
Can I share something with you on that? I'm so pleased that you touched on that. Years ago, I read the book by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. And he talks in there about, and when I read it, my kids were probably about 5 and 6. And so we implemented this exercise, and it's just been wonderful, and we still do it now, where he talks about having family meetings. Because he says you go to work and you'll have a boardroom meeting, you'll have a staff meeting, you'll meet somebody and have a meeting about your insurance or your car plan, but when do you ever have a meeting about your family and where your family's heading? And you start off by, you decide what kind of family do you want to be. So you're going to be the fun family, or the fit family, or the adventurous family, or the cuddly family, or, you know, and you get the kids to choose as well, you know, what name do we want to name our family? And then at the family meeting, you have someone that takes the minutes and they write down, and when my kids were 5 and 6, they loved, you know, they had a little notepad and they would write everything down. And each member of the family gets to say what they need help with that coming week. So for me, it might be, oh, you know, can you help me stack the dishwasher? My husband might say, when I come home from work, I need the first half hour to just unwind. The kids might say, well, I need taken to netball practice or swimming lessons or something. And then you say, but what can you give to the family this week? And it's really powerful, because then they say, oh, well, I won't scream and shout, or I won't slam a door, or I'll try and do my homework on my own, or I will help you with such and such, mom, or yes, dad, we will be quiet for you. And it just allows everybody to have a say. We write the minutes, and then afterwards you play a game. So you do Monopoly, or if it's younger kids, you know, Junior Scrabble or something. And then we used to go out for pizza afterwards. And that was and we did it on a Sunday afternoon, early evening, and that was and has been for years. Now we only do it once a month. We don't do it every week because our girls are older. But that sense of everybody contributing, and it just shows respect for everybody, regardless of who you are. And it doesn't mean that the kids then can start taking control. But they realize, they start taking responsibility for their behavior within the family, because often the kids can play the parents off one another and they can cause as much aggro. So that's just been a wonderful thing. And I've been telling a lot of women that I speak to during this COVID time, I've been saying to them, have a family meeting.
And that's exactly right. When I work with families, for instance, you know, it's getting the parents, first of all, on the same page, so that they know how to speak to each of the children in the way that they need to be spoken to, which will be different for each child. But at the same time, both the parents need to change differently so they talk the same way, because the kids will play one against the other. This is part of their job description. As I keep saying to parents, how often do your kids push you to the edge but not push you over? Because they've read you, they know exactly how to manipulate you. So if you think you're in charge, guess again. But I love the idea of having that meeting, because one of the things that I've realized with kids at school, one of the things that they're really wanting to have is to have some control and some say in where their education is going. So it's the same thing in the family, to be able to have a say about it. Yes, as you said, they're not going to be in charge, like to say, well, and take control of the family. The parents still have that role in unison with each other, because they connect with each other. And so the kids then have that one source of knowing what to do and what they can't do, but they can have a chance to actually voice what they want to do. This then, I love the idea of having that family board meeting, you know, and having it, and even giving it a name as well.
Yeah.
I think by looking at most of you, and the fact that you've all talked about physical touch, probably most of you will be the Cuddles family.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really a great way to do things. But that then would allow those men to be able to feel that they are more in control of their lives. They would feel that, and their partners would feel less angst and feel that they're also part of it. And it's through that changing the way in which we look at things. There's a great way to actually start to reducing the pressures of home, which can end up reducing domestic violence as well.
Yeah, we tried to not enforce, but we usually say to them, you need at least 1 hour family time to sit down, and let's all sit down and have dinner together. Get rid of those phones, devices, sit down and see how your day went. And we all have to make an effort, you know, like we all like to be busy to distract ourselves from real life. But the fact is that if you can have an hour family time and be interested in what went through the day, how you going, how are you, what was the best part of the day today, just little things, just for an hour, sit down all together. It makes a big difference to the rest of the day, the rest of the night there. It makes it a good night. And you learn to appreciate and love each other, because that's what you've got. You've got the family unit, and it's all about love. But that was great that you brought that up. I just realised that that's one of the things we do mention, family time.
The Boy Crisis, it's a great book that talks about the stats of, you know, boys growing up, the pressures and everything else, and, you know, the suicide rates and everything. One of the things they pointed out in there was that family dinner time, especially for the boys, the teenage boys, is the most important time of their week. If they can have that one night, or even if it's just one night a week, getting together with their family and having a meal. And it's one thing that I always had with the boys growing up, 3 boys, was we always ate together, and we ate at the table. There was no sitting around the TV and at different chairs and watching TV. Yeah. I went down to Canberra when my son was still living down there before Christmas, and sitting around the table, I realised everyone was quiet. So I just asked, well, okay, what's everyone grateful for? What was the best thing today? Anyway, we went through that couple of days I was there, each time we sat down. And a couple of months later, I went back down again. And my granddaughter, who was 11 at the time, first thing as we all sat down, she just started asking the question. And I found out she's been asking that question every meal since I brought it up down there. So she now runs that session. As they sit down, before anyone's got a chance to say anything, boom, she's in there, and she's asking people straight away. And you know, they're talking about things that are positive, and we could talk about something that you were grateful for that was really, you know, brought a lot of happiness to you through the day. You're reliving it again, and now the family's actually sharing that, so it's now magnified. Because I used to say that a problem shared is a problem halved. Well, it's usually a problem magnified and goes on a longer period if it's not resolved. So we know that anything you put in and people then come to it, you magnify it. So turn it into a positive thing that you're talking about, and watch that magnified around the family. And then people start to realise what, you know, if they're grateful about something in their life, they start to hear each other's gratitude, then they start to realise how grateful they are for each other.
And even in the workplace, one of the things that I started to do, because I was working with different companies, was I would always say, look, you're not the only one that feels like this. I'm talking with other managers or other colleagues, and they're struggling with their team too. And because I think often we can feel isolated and more lonely when we think, am I the only one that feels like this? I mean, I remember I hit 50 and I was going through the menopause, and I was like a crazy woman and thinking, now I know why nobody talks about this, because it's such a distressing time of life. But when I was able to open up and talk to other women about it, and they said, oh yeah, I feel like that too, because your hormones are all over the place. And then I think, oh, okay, I don't feel so bad now. And it's like you talking about your men's groups where you share. I think when we can be really open and honest, and that we're all the same on the inside and we all have struggles, and that's what COVID's done. It's like, I don't think there's ever maybe been a time where, I mean, maybe the world wars, but where everybody in the world, the whole world is affected by the same thing at the same time. And I've seen a lot of opening up, people showing that vulnerability, and that being okay to show that you're a bit frightened or a bit upset or worried about the future, or and sharing that in a way that then, but as you said there, Alan, it's like, well, then let's find a way forward. You don't want to stay stuck in the problem and hiding under a stone. We need to to keep finding a way out of this.
Mm.
And when you find a way to deal with it, then you can share that way with the people around you and help them.
So once you start to open up and you tell the people how you feel about things, that's when you start to feel a bit more empowered, because then you're realizing that other people are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the next step from there, instead of just staying in that and just dwelling in it, is, okay, well, if we're all going through this, what can we all do together to make a difference? And if somebody's scared and goes, well, I don't have an answer, then ask others and go, well, what do you reckon we should do together? Because it's easier working in a team than it is working on your own.
Absolutely.
And then you don't have the pressure on you of, oh, I've got to find a solution. Together we'll find a solution. And it eases the pressure on people, I think. The more that men start to reach out, first of all, start talking to their partners, reaching out to other men who they can chat with, to say that, you're not Father Christmas and you're not out there on your own. You're not the only person who's been through what you're going through. Right now, collectively, the whole world is feeling the pressure, and here's an opportunity to start conversations. And because you're all coming from the same level, there is no worry about egos in there, the feeling that you're not good enough. I think it's a great opportunity right now to do that. So before we run out of time, what I was going to ask, if you wouldn't mind, is each of you on that, is there one particular bit of advice or one thing that you would actually recommend to other people, or something that you're doing yourself that you believe other people would also benefit from knowing? So I'll just start with you, Anne, if I could.
Yeah, I can share something. So one of the things that I share with clients is to step into your bubble. and what that means is, if you can imagine that around you, you've got this invisible light bubble, and it's where you can be totally protected from everything in the external world. Because often what happens is we just feel overwhelmed with expectations from other people. Even the weather affects our mood, or what's going on at work, or what our partners just said to us, and sometimes we feel we're always in our own head, and we all know that, the brain, the conscious mind is like about 4% of how we run our life, and the unconscious is the other 96%. We're on automatic pilot so often. So when we can shift into really having that self-awareness that Peter talked about, and being able to step into somewhere where we feel we can breathe and we can just give ourselves some time. So in your bubble, it's impenetrable, so nothing can get through it, no negativity. And I even say to clients that if you imagine it's got a mirror, it's a mirrored lightweight bubble. So if someone draws you a dirty look, actually what happens is it reflects back at them. If somebody says something really nasty, it bounces off your bubble back to them. And so you can sit and feel protected in your bubble. And what you take in there with you is, in NLP, and we use the 5 senses. And so you take in something that you can see. So it might be a picture of your family that you love. So something that when you look at it, it just fills you with joy. Might be a picture of a holiday that you're due to go on and lying on the beach or something. You then take in a sound with you. So that might be your favorite music playing. And I know for myself that I love Scottish music. I love the Scottish country dancing music. When I was younger, I didn't go to discos. I went to Haley's. And when I'm feeling down, I only have to put on a bit of fiddle music, and it lifts my spirit instantaneously, because I've been doing it for a long time. We're creating new pathways in the brain, but that one for me is a very old one and a very deep one, brings back happy memories. So when I'm in my bubble, I just have this beautiful music. But it could be birds singing, it could be an audience applauding, it could be your children laughing, just something that if you were to close your eyes and listen would really lift your spirit. You then have something that you would touch. So it might be a soft piece of velvet that when you stroke it, it calms you. And it's all in the mind, by the way, not, this is, because whenever we think of something, we create a picture in our mind. And at the moment, we're creating all these negative pictures. But in your bubble, you're going to create this really positive, calming picture. And then the other side of feeling is it's not just touch, but it's how you actually feel. So if you think back to a time when you were like totally empowered, when you just felt that you were invincible, you did something that you had a breakthrough and it made a positive impact on others, and you just felt this wonderful feeling, then relive that and take that with you in your bubble. And it, you know, did you feel it like a tensity, intense in your tummy, or was it your heart racing, or where did you feel it in your body? Were your hands sweating with it, but it was exciting, not nerves? And so then when you're in your bubble, you think calmly, you feel wonderful, you feel on top of the world, and you're then able to carry that positive energy with you to whatever you are going to do. People use it when they're maybe going to do a presentation, for example, and they think, I'm so nervous about this presentation, but you step into your bubble, which is your place of power, and then the energy that comes from that is really positive for those around you. And sometimes I'll have ladies that, you know, they're in a meeting or they've got a meeting with their boss and they'll say, I'm so worried about this. And I say, go and lock yourself in the bathroom and step into your bubble. And you're going to go into that meeting in your bubble. And so nothing they do or say can pull you down or distract from your confidence and your, and so, yeah, I encourage people to do it during this COVID time too. Just give yourself time out.
Yeah, we've all got more time to be able to do that, you know, for at home and that. So it's great advice. How about you, Mark? Oops, you're muted still.
3 breaths. So one of the beautiful constraints we have is wearing a mask, and that's forced us to look at each other's eyes. And when physical touch might not be socially acceptable right now, what we can do is we can stop, we can look directly into the eyes of the person that we're with, and we could take 3 full deep breaths together. And it's the simplest, most difficult thing that we can do, because you want to get real with someone. You want to actually show up unabashedly who you are, how you feel at that moment. Take 3 breaths and look directly into that person's eyes. And then engage in a conversation or engage in whatever it is that you were doing. And when you leave, 3 breaths again. Utterly powerful. You connect on the subtle energetic level. You feel it in the body. And if you're both single, you might end up dating after. I mean, things happen. But it's a beautiful, simple exercise. And to Anne's point as well, the whole bubble, I love that idea. That's beautiful. Oftentimes too, I'll tell people in the mirror, go look in a mirror and take the 3 breaths and look directly into your own eyes. And that as well is a deeply powerful experience. So 3 breaths, that's my tip.
And that's a big challenge for a lot of people. I know many years ago, they said, go and look in the mirror. You go and look in the mirror and you know, try and hold it for 3 full breaths without feeling strange or wanting to look away. But it's the same thing. It's like, okay, when we do hug somebody, you know, put your arms around them, and quite often you'll see somebody tap the other person on the back. It's like, okay, time's over now. Get off.
Intimacy is tough. Intimacy is very tough. We're not a culture that actually likes feeling the real feelings, and we're getting better at it. COVID is forcing it.
Yeah, and I think that using the gaze, looking into someone's eyes, is far more intimate than the actual touching of somebody, because we mask it with the way in which we touch. So this removes the mask, or with as I say, now I see you. We've seen it in Avatar and other movies where they say, I see you. And this is when we really do.
Just real quick, I like to highlight, so when I was in undergrad work, I was very influenced by the Maori culture. There's a beautiful book and movie called The Whale Rider that introduced me to it. I had a teacher who is of Maori descent. And the way in which they traditionally approached each other was putting their foreheads together and taking a breath together. And then they look at each other's eyes. And that to me was just growing up in New York, as an American boy, that was not how you greet each other, right? And boys, it was all like, "What's up, bro?" Like that type of, covert or overt machismo. So yeah, there's something beautiful in that type of greeting. And Alan, I know you are very aware of Indigenous cultures as well, and I know you probably have more stories to share than I do. But there's other ways to do that, to greet, than the awkward pat on the back. Hey, how you doing? How you doing?
Yeah, when you come close to somebody like that, it is far more intimate, and this is the way people can have their intimacy now without having that fear of, and keeping their physical distance, being able to keep that in place, but being able to connect with people at a very deep level, because you look into their eyes, it gets you then to start thinking even deeper again. And I think there's a stronger connection than there is with the actual physical hug in itself. How about yourself, Peter?
Well, that's hard to beat. Bubble and breathing. Well, my one is extreme thinking, not taking one day at a time. People think what's going to happen in next week, the week after. They're already worried about tomorrow. Stay here in the here and now. And the biggest one is taking responsibility. It sounds a bit harsh, but you're empowered. It's up to you. If your relationship's not working, if your work's not working, anything in your life is not going the way you want to do it, what can I do about it? And sometimes there's so much more we can do. But, we've got to stop blaming and saying, okay, we're not getting on today. What can I do that's going to be nice? I might buy some flowers for my wife. We might all have a music night. Just come up with ideas. If you're passionate and you want to do it, it's up to you. I know it's harsh, but if we take responsibility, we'll find the answer.
Yeah. There's a bit of advice there to the men who are buying flowers. I heard a long time ago, if you buy a dozen roses for your partner, you'll get 1 brownie point. But if you give her 1 rose a day over 12 days, you'll get 12 brownie points.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So every time a man thinks he's done something for the woman, he should get 300 brownie points. That's only 1 brownie point. If you do a whole bunch of little things, and they get a brownie point for every one of them. And it's a consistency. Yeah. It's building we get ourselves in a way of thinking by thinking in a negative way over and over again, and we get into a rut. Well, by changing it and doing it consistently and doing things for other people, just small things on a consistent basis, they feel a lot better, you feel a lot better as well. It's about building those connections, I think, is most important, to not try and have to do really big things, but what are the little things I can do to make a difference today? Especially if you're feeling down, you only have to do a little thing. And after a while, those things just get bigger and bigger, and they become easier and easier. Okay, guys. Well, thanks very much for all of you for coming along, Anne, Mark, and Peter. Really enjoyed the insights and everything else. So thank you very much for being here. And to everybody who's been listening in, again, I hope you get a lot out of these panel discussions. And again, if you resonate with 3 people here on screen, get in touch with them and say hi and have a bit of a chat. If you like what they've been talking about, some of the ideas, ask them for some more ideas. And we'll see you all on the next Campfire Project panel discussion. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alan.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.